evening and welcome to the Vice Admiral Lawrence Ethics Essay Award Dinner. My name's Colonel Art Athens. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the director of the Naval Academy's Stockdale Center for Ethical Leadership. And your presence this evening is a testimony to the Naval Academy's commitment to moral development of our midshipmen. This is an evening to celebrate, to fellowship, and to renew our own commitment to lead with strength and virtue. It is now my distinct privilege to introduce the 62nd Superintendent of the Naval Academy. Admiral Carter is a 1981 graduate with his own fan club, graduate of the Academy, and a warrior who has been on the front lines for our Navy and our nation for the past 33 years. He has commanded VF-14, the Top Hatters, the USS Camden, a fast combat support ship, the USS Carl Vinson, a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, and the Enterprise Strike Group. Admiral Carter flew 125 combat missions in support of operations in Bosnia, Kosovo, Kuwait, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and safely completed 2,016 carrier-arrested landings, the record among all active and retired U.S. naval aviators. Additionally, Admiral Carter is the recipient of the Stockdale Leadership Award, the John Paul Jones Award for Inspirational Leadership, and the Distinguished Flying Cross with Combat V. Prior to assuming his current position, Admiral Carter served as the 54th President of the Naval War College. Please join me in welcoming Admiral Carter and his wife, Linda, who joins us this evening as well. Admiral Carter.
Well, good evening, everyone. Art, that was a little too long. I might not talk as long as my biography was. I want to say a special welcome to everybody here tonight. This is truly a wonderful evening. Before I get into just a couple of short remarks, I first want to welcome Mrs. Diane Lawrence, truly our guest of honor, and daughter Lori. Welcome from the Lawrence family. This is a special night in name of your husband, Vice Admiral William P. Lawrence, for which this evening is named. For my classmates, class of '81, and many of our distinguished guests, midshipmen, a lot of people know a lot about Admiral Lawrence. I just thought I'd just say a couple quick words about him. I mean, for my classmates, he was our superintendent here, our 49th superintendent of the U.S. Naval Academy. Had a big impact on, I think, just about every one of us that was in the class. Admiral Lawrence, as a senior at the Naval Academy, was really quite a remarkable midshipman. In fact, when you think about all that he did, it makes most of us feel really quite not worthy. I mean, he was the president of the class, the brigade commander, 3 varsity lettermen, and basketball, baseball, and football. I mean, who does that? And on top of that, he was one of the founding members of the Brigade Honor concept. Pretty remarkable set of accomplishments. And of course, then he went on to be a fantastic aviator, a test pilot, the first man to break the Mach 2 barrier, went on to fly multiple combat missions, probably most renowned for his steadfastness as a prisoner of war. And of course, after all that, making admiral and coming back here as a 2-star admiral during our time in the late 70s, early 80s, he was our 49th superintendent of the Naval Academy. He went on to continue to serve as the chief of naval personnel in his 3rd Fleet, and he's had just a tremendous amount of accomplishments besides writing the Tennessee State Song, of which I'm sorry I can't sing. But even the NCAA honored him with the Roosevelt Award, which is their highest award for a scholar athlete. So many accolades, but really what I think Vice Admiral Lawrence really epitomized was what this award is that we're honoring for our midshipmen tonight, and that is the foundation of trust and leadership, and that is founded in ethics. And for all of us here tonight, I want you to know that as I came here the year before, while I served as the War College president up in Newport, we took a good look at what we thought ethics was doing for us and across the entire spectrum of the United States Navy. And we believed that we were starting to go down the wrong path in what we understood as ethics in the Navy. We tended to think of it as a top-down briefing to flag officers and senior captains, trying to make sure that we tell our officers that it's how you not use your office for personal gain. Well, what I've come to find here, thanks to Art Athens, who was our class of '81 brigade commander back in 1978, also an honorary Class of '81 member, is the Naval Academy really does get it. They understand that ethics is really about moral judgment. It's about moral excellence. And you see that instilled in the writings that our midshipmen are doing, and some of whom we're going to honor tonight. And I want to say thank you to the extremely qualified and professional instructors who are teaching that courseware right here. So if I could ask the instructors of PE 203, so that's the ethics and moral, somebody help me out with the course title here, ethics and moral reasoning class for naval officers. So if I could ask all those instructors, please stand up. And I'd like to ask everyone to give them a round of applause. And as I close here, as we get to enjoy a wonderful meal tonight, I just ask for our midshipmen here tonight, as you get motivated to think about these topics, please carry them with you into the fleet. We need your enthusiasm. We need your understanding of this topic of leadership and ethics, because you're going to carry that torch for the rest of the fleet. Thank you all very much for being here. My classmates for the great class of 1981, I'm so proud that we as a class have taken this on. Is thanks to our, as a class, generosity that this event is happening tonight, and many of the other aspects of the leadership and ethics piece for the Stockdale Center. So thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you, Admiral Carter. Before we eat, I would like to now recognize the members of the class of 1981 who do sponsor this dinner in memory of Vice Admiral Bill Lawrence, their much beloved superintendent. So I'm going to ask everyone from the class of 1981 to stand so we can see who you are, and thank you for what you do. I also want to thank the superintendent's protocol staff, and I always try to do this at the beginning rather than at the end because they always disappear, and I think they have already. But they are always the ones who make sure that the seating is right, the invitations go out, and all those pieces that make a dinner like this so successful. Janet Price, Ann McConnell, and Tina Gorka, but again, I think they have already departed. And for the Naval Academy Band, who provided the music in the morning, and I think they have disappeared all as well. But we're supported by a great cast. And now I'd like to introduce Chaplain Gore, the senior chaplain here at the Naval Academy, to thank God for our food and set us on the right path for the evening.
Thank you. I'd like to invite all who wish to pray with me. God of righteousness, we thank you for planting within us a sense of right and wrong. Teach us to cultivate our consciences by listening with discernment both to the wisdom of the ages and the inspiration of the present generation. In so doing, save us from the all too common habit of simply justifying what we do. Rather, inspire us to pursue what some call holiness, others call virtue, so that we may be men and women who bear within us the marks of that high dignity given to us as human beings, created in your image. Now bless us as we reflect on the ethical dimensions of our lives, that we might all be leaders of character and consequence in our appointed spheres of influence. And thank you for this night. In your name we pray. Amen.
So please enjoy your dinner. I'll come back when we get ready to introduce our guest speaker. It's a great dinner, and again, thank you all for being here with us tonight. General Furness's current assignment is legislative assistant to the Commandant of the Marine Corps. And as I consider this man's background, I can think of no better person to speak to us this evening on the 13th anniversary of 9/11. Please join me in welcoming Brigadier General Furness.
Don't let him take that cake. I'll be back. Colonel Athens, thank you for that kind introduction. It's more than I deserve. Admiral Carter, thank you for hosting me here at the Naval Academy. the faculty and staff of these great midshipmen, the midshipmen themselves, your parents, family, and award winners. It's a great honor for me to be here tonight at the United States Naval Academy, an institution that I hold in great esteem. I have a lot of fellow Marine officers who are graduates of this institution that are peers, friends, and colleagues of mine and have been for the last 28 years. And I know what a quality education and development of a leader this great academy produces. So it's an institution that strives to educate more than the mind. It strives to develop moral and ethical leaders, leaders that this nation needs to guide her in both peace and war. We are very fortunate this evening to live at a time and in a country that holds its armed forces in the highest esteem. However, this can never be taken for granted. Indeed, it must be jealously guarded and continually cultivated, for it hasn't always been this way. This is why any perceived stains or tears in the moral fabric of our service members attract so much attention, whether it's on 60 Minutes or that dastardly thing known as YouTube. Sadly, the immoral actions of a small number of uniformed service members have discredited them themselves and embarrassed the rest of us during our nation's longest war, a war fought not by generals or admirals, but by young leaders like yourself, men and women not too much older than you, are the ones that America placed in the ethical friction point of places like Ramadi or Fallujah or Marja or Sangin. The honor and pride of our nation was entrusted into your capable hands. Now, the United States Naval Academy is well known and has a great tradition for screening, selecting, and producing leaders that possess the highest moral and ethical standards, and who upon graduation possess ironclad integrity. However, traits like integrity or honor or discipline cannot be developed or created in a day, or for that matter in 4 years. Most of us in this room learned our moral code from our parents or our teachers or other mentors we encountered along the path to adulthood. Institutions like this teach, reinforce, and hone the moral foundations that we'll use the rest of our lives. However, let me step back for a minute because it doesn't escape me for 1 second that today marks the 13th anniversary of the attacks on our homeland. And it's only fitting that we meet here tonight on the anniversary of 9/11 to discuss ethics and ethical leadership. We must put that leadership into the context of the world in which you will serve. So recognizing the significance of 9/11, I'd like to state, and it's very obvious, that the world changed forever on that day. Violent extremism reached our shores and killed thousands of our countrymen. This enemy was real, and it was brought up close and personal to all who watched on television or who were the first responders in the towers in New York or in the Pentagon. Like many of you, I'll never forget that day. I was a major. I was a student at Command and Staff College in Quantico, recovering from 3 years of recruiting duty. So, we can talk about that later because there's a lot of demons in that one, I can tell you. And we were in a small group discussion room, conference room 7, Silent 7, we called ourselves. And we were discussing asymmetric warfare. Okay, so we had a lecture in the morning, went up to the small group room, we're discussing asymmetric warfare, which you would think would lead us to instantly understand what was happening on the TV. But the door opened, and a corporal came in and said, the director wants you to turn on the television to CNN. We turn on CNN, and you see the image of one tower smoking. And the first conversation was, how drunk do you have to be to put a plane in a building, you know? We didn't even contemplate that we were being attacked until a few minutes later we see a plane fly into the second tower. And then it was eerily silent. We then heard reports of the attack on the Pentagon, a plane down in Shanksville, and a couple hours later, a base that was in lockdown, we were sent home. Luckily, I lived on base, so I could leave and go home. But you went home and you hugged your wife and your kids, and we stayed away from school for 3 days. And we got brought back at 07. All the U.S. students were put in the master bedroom there at the Marine Corps University, and our director, Colonel Huddleston, talked to us, and he said, I don't know what this means, but what I do know is your life has changed forever. And he was right. Our lives were changed forever. For most service members, multiple combat deployments followed. I mean, I deployed more as a lieutenant colonel than I did as a lieutenant. It's not supposed to be that way. Just ask my wife. Families sacrificed, and thousands of American sons and daughters made the ultimate sacrifice. They willingly gave their last full measure of devotion to protect this great nation, and more importantly, to ensure the safety and security of their loved ones here at home. 9/11 gave birth to 2 wars and helped create an environment that we now call the new normal, a dynamic and complex security environment that you future officers will lead in. The reality of the new normal is that you will face a far more challenging and far more global uncertainty than I ever did as a young officer. The bipolar world of the Cold War was simple. This world is anything but. You will face an environment filled with crisis that puts Americans at risk. You'll face the tactical fallout from geopolitics of sovereignty and territorial disputes, competition for scarce global resources, complex demographic pressures, human migration, and natural disasters that are and will be predictably unpredictable. And lastly, the new normal is full of violent religious and ethnic extremists that threaten the political structure of weak states. You'll confront non-state actors, transnational criminal organizations, and super-empowered individuals who seek to undermine global order and create chaos for their own benefit. In the context of uncertainty and keeping the new normal environment in mind, I'd like to center my remarks on the ethical leadership at the tactical level, the level that you will enter upon your graduation from this institution. I'd like to take it out of the periphery of geopolitics and get it into the heart of what you as junior officers will face today. I'd like to call it the reality of being a second lieutenant or ensign. General James Mattis, one of my mentors, recently said, as a leader, the number one authority you have is moral authority. The number one power you have is expectation. If your Marines expect to see you lead at the point of friction, and you lead, and you expect to see them moving forward, then the moral imperative is what really takes us forward. Now, I'll admit, I probably look at this topic too simply. I'm a Marine, I'm an infantry officer. Okay, I can focus on like 3 things at a time, and multiples of 3, and then you lose me. I believe when we talk ethics, it's black and white. There is right and there is wrong, and when you look in the mirror, you know the difference, okay? Trouble occurs when you live somewhere between right and wrong, in that gray area of moral compromise. That is when things get complicated. That's when you fail to uphold your personal honor and the institution's special trust. Ultimately, ethical successes or failings, morality or immorality, prudence or extremism It all boils down to judgment and character. Seen from this standpoint, many quote-unquote difficult decisions need not be so difficult. As officers, you serve as a symbol of right, but also as the moral compass, always pointing true north. Your unit, your Marines or sailors, will respond to how you act, the deeds you do, more than they will on anything you say. They will become mirror images of your actions and the things you value. So, because Colonel Athens told me to tell a few stories, I'm going to tell a few stories. Most of them are true. No, they are. They all deal with principally moral courage, which, I have 7 combat tours. I've seen physical courage everywhere, but moral courage is harder to gird than the physical courage on the battlefield, and it's much more infrequently displayed. So that's what I'll give you some instances, some personal, some not, about what that means and how I think it affects the way you lead and who you are, more importantly, as an individual and what you stand for. When I left the Infantry Officer Course in February 1988, I went to 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. And I was a regular officer because I'd had an NROTC scholarship. And at that time, we were augmenting a lot of officers who were reserve officers coming out of different commissioning sources. And augmentation was brutal. If you weren't the #1 guy out of division, you had no hope of getting augmented in the Marine Corps. So because I had a regular commission, I check in, I'm a grunt, I'm ready to get that platoon, and Wayne Rollins says, you're going to be the S4 Alpha, the MMO, and the Ordnance Officer. I didn't even know what that was. I had no training in it. And so I go home, open to my wife, and I called my father. How was it? Well, I'm like a pogue, Dad. He didn't know what that was, but I said, I'm not a steely-eyed killer leader, and that's what I wanted. He goes, hey, look, you don't get to pick and choose what you do. Succeed where they plant you. Do the best job you can and shut your mouth. Aye, aye, sir. And he wasn't a Marine. So the good thing was I got thrown on a deployment to Panama as an extra lieutenant because as W.E. Rollins would say, he only had 2 fingers, he'd say, well, it's a funny thing about the shooting stars, lieutenants don't last long, so I'm going to give you to India Company. I'm like, thank you, I guess. So I became like the log officer for this company that went down in the prelim to Just Cause in Panama. I didn't know what I was doing, a lot of activity, a lot of energy. That's, throw that into the equation and good things usually happen on the backside. And I was responsible for maintaining the ordnance, so the ammunition, and we had a lot of it. And we were in the rainy season in Panama. It's like raining like 6 inches a night, and we have got to keep this dry. So my company commander, what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. I said, but I saw a CB sign on Rodman Naval Base, and I've watched movies, and they have heavy equipment. So I'm going to go down there and see what happens. So I go down there, and I convince this chief, who makes me his son that he never had, and I say, this is what I need. I'm getting crushed. They're going to kill me. I need to get someplace to store ammo, a lot of it, in a dry space. He says, I can fix this. So the next day, all the heavy equipment in the Panama Canal Zone is up in our pods, and they take a mountain and cut it in half, and they dig 2 big holes, and they put ISO containers in the hole of the mountain, and they do all this stuff, and then presto chango, I've got these 2 giant ammo lockers. I can lock them. It's beautiful. I'm a hero, okay? He's like, what do you do? I said, I just asked. So we were there for about 4 months, and then we hadn't had a shower, hadn't had a bath. Somebody looked at us and said, you guys got to get to Rodman, clean up a little bit. And then, because our sea bags were in Rodman, we hadn't even touched our sea bags in 4 months. We're living out of Rousepack. And so we were doing that. An Army unit came from the Canal Zone to relieve us in place, to give us this opportunity for 3 days to stand down, refit, and then we were coming back out. And we had a MEB over top of us, a MEB forward. It wasn't a whole MEB. And so they were going out to do kind of a CPX here. And they get out there and they find they don't have ammo, and there were, you know, people who might want to do you harm out there occasionally. So then they decided they wanted to be armed, and they went to the ammo dump of mine to get their ammo. Now because the Army's coming in, you know, I ain't trusting those guys, so I not only locked it, but I guarded it. So I had a sergeant and 8 Marines with orders. You know, I went to VMI, I know how to do guard stuff, man. So I write up a little guard order, and you don't open this until I'm here. I have to keep account. Anybody that draws ammo, I'll be the guy to sign it out. I got these documents. We got to do this the right way. Aye, aye, sir. So I go to get my first shower in 4 months, and I get a radio call that says, sir, they want to draw ammo. You need to get here ASAP. So I whip the Humvee around, and I come back, and when I'm there, the doors are open. The sergeant is, you know, not feeling real good. And I go, what happened? And he goes, hey, sir, I told them, I read the orders. I told them that you were coming, you were going to be here any moment, but they really wanted the ammo, and so the colonel came here, and he just ordered me. And I told him, you know, that wasn't a legal order, and he didn't like that, and so they opened it up, sir. I'm sorry. I'm like, and he's looking at me with the eyes of, and what are you going to do about this, Lieutenant? So I'm like, okay. Now, intuitively in my gut, I go, that's just not right. You don't use your rank to make a Marine do something he was told not to do. So I walk over to the colonel. I said, sir, I need to talk to you. What do you need there? You know, I said, sir, we need to walk over here a little out of the voice range of the men. And I said, sir, you and I both know that what you did there was wrong. You made a sergeant violate his order, and you used your rank to do it. And that's not right. And I learned another important lesson right after that much to my surprise, the Marine Corps is a hierarchical organization, and I was firmly on the bottom of that. He didn't really like being called on it, and I think probably he chewed me out pretty good. But he chewed me out in front of my men, and that's okay because they knew I'd went to bat for them. And, you know, they knew the deal too. Colonels, the lieutenant, the colonel wins that one all the time. And so I walk back and I tell the sergeant, I said, lock it back up. We've come to an understanding that won't happen again. Aye, sir, thank you. I go back, and my CO goes, how'd it go? I go, I got this thing coming, sir. He told me I'm getting a letter of reprimand. What is that? He goes, is it non-punitive? Yes, sir, you use that word. What is that? And he goes, don't worry about it. So 2 weeks later, I'm, you know, standing tall, getting my letter of reprimand for being disrespectful to a Marine 06. But in my company that I would later go to, when I got back, when this thing ended, I went to the battalion, I went back to India Company. You know, the Marines in India Company knew that the lieutenant would stick up for them. And there's a lot of wasta you get for doing the right thing there. That's not an easy decision. In fact, quite frankly, I don't even recommend it. But it was one of those things, you know, when you're in charge and you can look at your Marines and you're like, I got to take up for this guy. I got to go to bat for him. And a lot of times you're going to go bat for people and it's not going to go well for you. And that doesn't mean the next time you don't go to bat for people, okay? You know, I really believe, because I went back to one of the things that Colonel Rawlins, later General Rawlins, told me when I checked in. He goes, I'll tell you 3 things. We're grunts, 3 things. I can remember that. And I remember to this day, as it was yesterday, he was telling to me, to be a good Marine officer, you need 3 things. You got to know your shit, but you got to know your stuff, okay? Well, you got to be tactically competent. You have to take care of your men, okay? And you got to be physically fit. I'm like, I'm a 300 PFT, or I got 1 out of 3 of these already, okay? But it stuck with me. You got to take care of your men. And sometimes that means pushing them hard. Sometimes that means standing in front of a very senior officer saying, no, sir, that's not right what you did to him, okay? It's a tough choice, but I recommend you take it. The second story is similar. This is not my anecdote, but it's passed on to me. And, you know, the Marines, we're a tribe, so it's an oral tradition for us. But General Zinni was a 9th Marine CO when I was a young lieutenant, and he had a lot of big, teacher. And he was really the teacher, scholar, warrior type of guy. And so he would have this lecture he called Combat Concepts. And in it, it's talking about leadership, much like here tonight. So I use this story because I think it's relevant to, again, moral courage, but also holding junior leaders accountable and setting standards and adhering to standards. General Zinni's flying to Vietnam, second tour. He's going to be a company commander in 5th Marine Regiment. And on these flights, he's sitting with a brand new lieutenant, and General Zinni had been an advisor as a lieutenant. And so he was pretty confident in himself, even though this was his second tour, so he kind of knew what he was getting into. The lieutenant, right off the factory floor, hey, and he's putting a stiff upper lip, but you're scared, okay? You're going into Vietnam combat. You have no idea what you're getting yourself in for. And so they talk the whole flight. They land. Captain Zinni goes one way. This lieutenant goes the other. A day later, they arrive at the same combat base together. And he walks around the sea hut, and he sees the same lieutenant who's now going to be in Captain Zinni's company. But he's already been down. He's beat Zinni down there, and he's meeting his platoon now for the first time. So he's talking to his platoon sergeant, a crusty sergeant, probably been in country 6-8 months, probably a lot of firefights under his belt. And he said, and they're just talking. He said, well, look, I want to inspect the men's weapons. I want to do that the first thing. So I want a formation, and I want to do a weapons inspection. And the sergeant's like, well, sir, come on. You know, this is combat. We clean our weapons. Come on, sir, you don't need to do that. He goes, and so General Zinni would say, now the lieutenant's unsure of himself, because somebody probably told him in a class at TBS, as we're often do, learning objective, whatever, somebody stomped a foot. First thing you need to do is inspect your weapons. So that's what he's doing. He's sure of himself. But now he's not. Combat veteran kind of put him back on his heels, and now there's doubt in his mind. And Zinni watches around the corner. He wants to see how this guy's going to pan out. And so the kid goes, well, okay, I hear you, and it's probably not needed, but I want to do it anyway. Good. You stood up for yourself. So he forms them up. He comes back, takes the first weapon, takes the second weapon, goes, these weapons are filthy. I thought you said you cleaned these weapons in combat. And the sergeant goes, well, I didn't know you were going to do a boot camp inspection, sir. So the lieutenant's just sitting there and dismisses the platoon, pulls the NCOs. Here's my standards. Bum, 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 bum. Go away, come back. Next time he inspects, he gets what he wants. Okay? Weapons are clean. Moral of the story, don't back, when you know you're right, stand your ground. Okay? When you accept a lower standard, that's a new standard. And that thing will be slippery. It'll go lower and lower and lower the longer you are under pressure. So don't do it the first time. Okay? Never lose an opportunity to correct. Never lose an opportunity to maintain a standard that exists. And that's what this lieutenant did. And so General Zinni's telling the story to say that takes a lot of moral courage in a guy that junior in a situation like that. And he said that lieutenant did really well his 13 months in Vietnam. And he does really well because he knows who he is and he sticks by his guns. So that's my second little moral courage story. The third one is my most enjoyable one because it is mine. I was a planner, not a very good one, but I was a planner in the 1st Marine Division in 2003, and General Mattis was my boss. And you all know General Mattis, former CENTCOM commander, and he'd been my regimental commander as a company commander, so we knew each other, and he actually pulled me out of school to do this, so we have an existing relationship. We're getting ready to brief what we call Phase 3 Bravo, which is after we've turned over, we've crossed one river, and we're going up to cross the Tigris. It's that phase of the operation. And the first thing you do when you're planning, you get your boss's guidance. What do you want to see? He goes, so he says, I want you to look at seizing the bridges over the Tigris with an air assault. Roger that, sir. So I'm the planner. I assemble the wing guys, and we have 20 folks in a tent with dust everywhere and laptop computers, and we're doing this planning process. And as we looked at this, we just didn't have the assets we needed because the only bird we had that could do that mission was a 53. 53 availability during this phase of the war was like 35%. They were taking a big hit. They weren't up very much. So we didn't have many of them. It was the only one we could use because of the distance. And what he wanted to do was take them out of 3-5, get out of your tracks, get in the bird, seize things, link up. And as we moved it all out on the big map, I'm like, we're going to do this. By the time all the pieces are done with these 53, I can move 250 packs and 8 tow anti-tank vehicles. That's it. That's the force limit that I'm going to put down there. And then they are going to be 45 clicks ahead of the division for X amount of time. And at that point, I've got an LAR battalion that's the lead unit that if I just say go 45 clicks, they're there like this. They have long-range comm. They have mobility, armor, firepower. Like, so we can't, all of us came to conclude, why don't we just task 3rd LAR to do that? Good idea. And so that's what we come up with. Now, my first mistake was not keeping the boss informed. So the foot stomper is, don't surprise your general in the COA selection brief, in case, if you're writing this down. So I'm in the tent. We've got General Kelly, the Assistant Division Commander, Colonel Dunford, our future Commandant, Colonel Hummer, Colonel Dowdy, and all the staff. General Broadmeadow was our 4, a lot of talent in the room. I'm the briefer. Got my laser pointer, PowerPoint, I'm going. I get to the point where 3-5 is supposed to do the air assault, but that's 3rd LAR seizing that bridge with a tank company and some, attached and some other stuff. And he goes, whoa, 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 wait a minute. I thought we were seizing the bridge by air, by an air assault. Yes, sir. And I said, we looked at this, and he said, time out. Everybody leave, except, I'm like, oh, this is going well. So when they kick everybody except the colonels and the generals out of the tent when you're briefing, it's not going well. So he's like, I thought that was what we were going to do. I said, sir, so I just go methodically through how we decided, what we looked at. I had the facts in here because we'd been looking at this problem for 10 days. The readiness rates, how many packs we could have, how far they were going to, relative to the enemy. And I'm like, we believe this is a better decision for these reasons. And I go through them, and he's looking at me, and he's not, and I'm just like, does anybody want to like take my place right now? And it's one of those, you just don't want to be there. And so eventually he goes, okay, bring everybody in. We're good. And I finished the brief. And, I'm literally kind of like almost, I wouldn't admit it, but I was probably a little shaking by that whole experience. But again, the collective wisdom of the group prevented a more risky COA from being adopted. It wasn't one he wanted. It was more flashy to do it in the air. Could we have done it in the air? Yeah, we could have done it in the air. The real kicker was I couldn't verify if Numantia was free of man pads. So you were going to have to land and near an urban area, which could have been riddled with SA-7s, with big helicopters. It could have been a disaster. And the risk wasn't worth it when you look at how we could have done it a different way. And that's what won the day. I'm folding my stuff up. I'm like, man, I'm probably going to be sent back to Quantico now and more schooling. And Colonel Dunford at the time comes up to me and goes, good job. I'm like, were you in the same brief I was? Because I thought that was about the worst thing I've ever done in my life. He goes, no. Hard questions. You answered them well. You did a good job. Good decision. Thanks. And he walked out. Now I feel like $1 million. So there's 2 things here. If you're a senior leader, that's the way to treat a guy who's a little bit shaken and is now doubting whether he knows what he's doing or not. And if you're in that spot, that's when you study. You have to know your business. If you know your business and you're on solid footing there, don't get pushed off by rank, okay? And he wasn't trying to push me off. He just wanted to make sure he was testing me. And he wanted to make sure I knew what I was talking about, or he was going to make me relook at the problem. And when we were doing that, he didn't really want the collective masses looking at this wire brushing that I was getting, but it all worked out for the best. So that's another moral courage, and how, as a senior leader, you can exert some positive leadership in a situation that, you know, could have gone south. I mean, I really was shaken. I needed somebody to put an arm around me and say I did a good job after that. And that made all the difference in the world. And my last little narrative is about a place in town called Hamandia. Okay, I'm a battalion commander. I'm the commanding officer of 1st Battalion, 1st Marines. And in 2006, after they blow up the Samarra Mosque and Baghdad becomes an ethnic cleansing battleground, MNF West, the Marine Zone, got tasked to send an infantry battalion into Baghdad. And I was the closest one to the line, so I got chosen, but it probably made more sense to do that. So what they did was they gave me 2 other companies, an LAR company and another rifle company, and the mission was to take 650 Marines into Baghdad and work for 1st Brigade, 10th Mountain, which is what I did. But I still had my other AO with the rest, so I had 2 bosses, Colonel Nicholson, now Major General Nicholson, and Colonel Snow, now Major General Snow, U.S. Army. Great guys. But big 7 companies, big span of control. One of the towns we had is Hamandia. It was in the suburbs of Baghdad. It was a Sunni Shia fault line. We were getting ID'd there. We were getting shot at there. It wasn't a good place to go to work. The company that I had in this area was from another battalion. I won't name them, but another battalion. So they weren't mine, and I didn't know them very well. But instantaneously, they didn't look like my guys. They were a little bit more disheveled. They had lower standards of a lot of things. And I spent 90% of my time with that one unit. I became the battalion commander for 2 task force and the company commander for a company, okay? In retrospect, I made mistakes here. I should have fired that guy, okay? Or sent the company back because they weren't doing me any favors. I didn't do that because they didn't belong to me, and I didn't feel like that would be good for the team. So I said, I'll grip the stick tight. I can do this. And I just put leadership overload on this particular unit. One night I get a call. It's about 2:30 in the morning. I'm just getting ready to hit the rack. And they say, hey, this company has killed an IED in placer. Good, you know, and at hot spot, at whatever. Next day I go out to the squad. I shake all their hands. Hey, good job. That's what you got to do with these guys. Way to go. About a week later, I'm doing my, daily, weekly, depending on the situation, Sheikh engagement with Sheikh Al-Zobai of the Al-Zobai tribe, the Grand Poopah, and his son. I called Michael Corleone for the obvious reasons. And I meet with them, and Michael, through interpreter, says, we got a problem. I go, what? He goes, your guys murdered him, took a guy out of his house and shot him. I'm like, what? When? 2 nights or 3 nights ago, they gave the date. I'm like, well, we killed a guy in that area, but that guy was in place in an IED. He said, no, not this guy. He's got one leg. He's got a fake leg. So how does he work a shovel with a fake leg? Good point. I said, okay, look, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring some lawyers back. Can you get the witnesses together so my legal people can kind of talk to them and figure out, kind of do a preliminary inquiry, figure out what this is going to be about? And he said, yeah, when you want. I said, tomorrow morning, I'll bring them here. Okay, what time? 08, they'll be here. I go back, I call General Nicholson. I said, hey, sir, and General Snow, or colonels at the time, this is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm doing. I will have more information for you tomorrow. I don't know how this is out. So I have an Army lawyer, 2 Marine lawyers. We all go in there, and he has all the witnesses there. So they all tell the same story. This is what happened. I'm like, Now, all the lawyers, 1 Army, 2 Marine, a Marine major, Marine captain, an Army captain, they all say, they pull me aside and go, sir, this is BS. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to investigate this thing. Our Marines didn't do that. They're not. I said, wait a minute. We killed a guy, okay? We're talking now about how we killed a guy. I said, and my spider senses are saying this company is perfectly capable of doing this kind of thing because they're not disciplined. Okay? And in combat, the most important thing that you can be is to be disciplined. Okay? I mean, 7 tours, I believe it. No one's going to convince me otherwise. So I said, look, I'm going to ask for the pros to come in and do this. I'm going to ask for NCIS to come in. So I come back to the Sheikh. I said, look, we're going to bring professional investigators back here. I need to talk to all these people again. I need to see the crime scene. And here's the other kicker. And this is my, I'm going to throw chin music, to use a baseball analogy, and back him off the plate. I said, look, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to dig this guy up. We're going to have to fly him to a lab. We're going to have to do some testing on him. I know that's a flashpoint in your religion, but I'm telling you, if these guys did this to convict them, we got to have that. We got to have that evidence. He goes, when you want to dig them up, and I was like, whoa. So, long story short, the NCIS guys come in a couple days. They're like, this is nothing, sir. Don't worry about it. And then one member of that squad breaks and says, this is what happened. And the story was exactly like the Iraqis had said. So, that gave birth to the Hamidiyya, I think 7 or whatever. It was 1 corpsman and 7 Marines. And, that's a tough call because I've got lawyers that are going to back me up. They said, don't investigate, sir. I got legal advice. I'm covered. Right, IG, I'm good, right? I think, but really in my heart, I knew there was something more to it. And that's the inquisitiveness of this is what you have to think about. And the other thing you have to think about, the more senior you get, is the impact to the service. That moral cloth I talked about earlier. And your reputation with the country, in my job with the Congress, and how this is going to play out. And so you want to handle things the right way. If that was your father, you'd want somebody to investigate. So, because he's an Iraqi, do we care less? We shouldn't. So, my point is, that was one of those things. I got a lot of pats on the back. You did the right thing. Now, I'll give credit to Haditha for making my periscope a little more clearer about what you had to do in this environment. So that had happened 6-8 months before and was breaking as I came in for my second tour as a battalion commander in Iraq. And so this was something I was very acutely aware of. I'd like to think I would have done it anyway, but after Haditha, it was easier to do it. I'd like to think if it had been Charlie 1-1, I would have done it too. I don't know. I think I would have, but you don't know. Because it wasn't my, it didn't wear my logo. Wore my name tag, which that was bad enough, U.S. Marines. So that is a lesson of your Marines can do some, and sailors can do some horrible things. We always say with the enemy, don't assume a capability away when you're fighting an enemy. They can't do this, they can't do that. Don't assume away a capability for a sailor or Marine. Okay, they're capable. They may not do it, but they have the capability. You have to be inquisitive about these things, or you will get yourself, your unit, and your institution in a lot of trouble. So, those are my stories. I'll conclude here by saying you're going to face ethical dilemmas throughout your career. Some will be sticking up for a sergeant. Some will be investigating a war crime. You have to handle them all well. And in this business, there's no mulligans on these, okay? You mess one up, and that's, you get on the wrong side of ethical, and those are career-ending decisions for us. We have to be. That special trust and confidence that's in your commission, it means that. And once you've lost it, you're no good to us anymore. And you have to go. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. You're a great guy. You wore the cloth for a while. You served. But when you cross that, that's it. We can't trust you. And in our business, you got to trust your wingman. You got to trust the guy that's covering you. Trust is the foundation, and that is really talking about what kind of person you are and that moral and ethical responsibility to do the right thing. If you give away your integrity, you give it away forever. To me, the severity of ethical lapses doesn't matter. You'll never get that back. Fail to uphold a standard of conduct or regulation, and you just established a lower one. Or worse, sanctioned misconduct. Let me end with a few brief thoughts from history. At the height of the Roman Empire, the highest honor bestowed upon a military leader was a triumph, a civil ceremony and religious rite held to publicly celebrate and sanctify the military achievement of an army commander who had won a great military victory. Only the Senate could grant a triumph. And obviously, the Roman Senate could get bills passed, so they would have these parades. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, my current job sometimes gets me down. During the event, the celebrated general wore regalia that identified him as a near divine or near kingly person, with a laurel wreath was held above his head. He rode in a chariot through the streets of Rome in unarmed procession with his army amidst the spoils of war. Behind the general stood a slave who, while holding golden laurels over the head of the general, repeatedly whispered in his ear, "Memento mori," remember, you are mortal. I have no doubt that those of you in this audience tonight, especially the midshipmen that are students in this great academy, are going to go from here and do great things and serve our nation honorably and proudly for years and years to come. I wish you all the best. Okay, fair winds and following seas. Congratulations on your accomplishments, especially the awards winner, the award winner for the papers. I read them; they were great. I wish you all the best of luck. Godspeed, Semper Fidelis.
Sir, I'm actually going to have you come up here just for a moment. You actually mentioned the idea of a moral compass, and that's what we're going to give you today from the Stockdale Center for Ethical Leadership. A moral compass, and I think in the current job you're in, it's even more important to put it very prominent on your desk for those you work with, and we know that you will keep your moral compass clean and pure.
I'm going to take it across the river and see if it works.
Thank you, sir. In a second, Before we actually give out the awards, I want to emphasize that these accomplishments don't happen without the instructors that Admiral Carter recognized previously, and I want to recognize a friend and colleague as well who's the course director of that ethics course and helps shepherd the many cats that are in that program, and that's Captain Rick Rubel, the Distinguished Military Professor of Ethics. This event also gives me an opportunity to introduce 3 resident fellows that are going to be part of the Stockdale Center in the coming year. They study one specific area of military ethics for the year, and then it culminates in the McCain Conference. This year we have Dr. Jessica Wolfendale from West Virginia University. Jessica is right down there. Welcome. Our second fellow is Dr. Ashleen Menchaca Benyulo, who just completed a fellowship at Princeton University. Ashleen. And our third fellow couldn't actually be here tonight, Dr. Joe Capizzi, who's from the Catholic University of America. Now, as far as these papers and the awards go, the way this works is that instructors actually nominate papers from their section from both the fall and the spring semesters of NE 203. Those papers that have been nominated are then screened and judged by the civilian professors within leadership ethics and law that are the philosophers who teach the course and give that moral context each Monday for NE 203. So they'll narrow down that group to a group of about 5 to 7 in the fall and spring semester. At that point, we have outside readers. neutral observers who help us choose those winners. And I'd like to introduce two of the three that actually served as outside readers for us this year. First one was Mr. Paul Neary, the Director of Ethics and Business Conduct at Boeing Defense, Space, and Security, the Boeing Company. Paul? The second outside reader was Mr. Steve Ward, a senior intelligence officer with the Central Intelligence Agency and a former adjunct professor at the Naval Academy. Steve? There you are. And the third reader was Chaplain Blues Baker, who was the former chaplain of the United States Marine Corps. So we're going to honor our finalists in this way. I'm going to ask Admiral Carter and General Furness to join me up at the podium here. And I'm going to read a letter that actually goes to each of these finalists. I'm only going to read it one time, and then I'm just going to mention the name and the subject of their paper. I'll ask that finalist to come up to receive their certificate from Admiral Carter, General Furness, and myself. You'll get a picture taken, and after the rousing applause, you will then return to your seat, and we'll continue through the process. So, Admiral and General, if you'd come on up. So the first ones are from the fall semester. So this is the farthest away. They're obviously now second-classmen, but they were third-classmen at the time that they actually wrote this. And this is from the director of the Stockdale Center to Midshipman Second Class Eleanor Derwin, and the letter of commendation. I commend you for your outstanding contribution to the ethics essay competition with your paper entitled Moral Permissibility of Humanitarian Intervention. Your paper was selected by a panel of distinguished experts as a finalist from a field of over 400 entries submitted by students in any 203 during the fall 2013 semester. Your achievement is a testament to both your academic ability and understanding of the ethical implications of service in the United States Navy and Marine Corps. I applaud your commitment to excellence and appreciate your drive to prepare yourself morally and mentally to lead sailors and Marines. Congratulations and best wishes in all your future endeavors. Signed, A.J. Athens. So again, if Midshipman Derwin would come on up, we'll give you your certificate. You'll get your picture taken. Congratulations. All right, so you're going to turn around in the middle there, and you're going to be looking right there at the camera. All right, thank you. So the next finalist from the fall semester was Midshipman Second Class Ellie McCarty. And again, the letter would be the same, but the title of her paper was Sovereignty with Strings Attached, the Ethics of International Intervention. So, Midshipman McCarty. Thank you. Next finalist is Midshipman Second Class Molly McNamara, and the paper was Complications of Modern Cyber Warfare. Midshipman McNamara. Next award finalist is Midshipman Second Class Spencer Shashab, and the essay is Humanitarian Intervention. Next finalist in the fall was Midshipman Second Class Lucas Temple for the paper The Morality of Humanitarian Aid Through the Just War Perspective. Midshipman Temple. And this is the award winner for the fall semester, Midshipman Second Class Alina Sanders, and her paper, The Ethical Intricacies of Cyber Warfare. She will receive a check that's, just so you know, it's in right behind the letter here. And then she will also receive the Tennessee Patriot book about the naval career of Vice Admiral Lawrence, and receive a plaque and have her name permanently engraved outside of the Stockdale Center. So you got a whole bunch of things that, that you get as the award winner. Congratulations. Please come up. So that was the fall. We now move to the spring semester. So again, these were all written while they were third classmen, but obviously now second classmen. So the first finalist is Midshipman Second Class Jordan Boyland, and that paper was Militaristic Suicide, How Selective Conscientious Objection Can Ruin the Military. Please come up, Midshipman Boyland. Next finalist is Midshipman Second Class Jody Lamb, and the name of the essay, The Natural Law Foundation of Just War Theory. Midshipman Lamb. Next finalist from the spring is Second Class Ryan McDonald for the paper Moral Implications of Intentionally Targeting Non-Combatants with Lethal and Non-Lethal Force. Midshipman McDonald. Now, just to give additional credit to the NE 203 instructors, see, I just have to read the name and the title. They have to grade these papers once a week as they go through the semester. So that's the real hard part of what they have to do. So I've got the easy role just to make that clear. The next finalist is Midshipman Second Class Laura Strombach, and the title is On Selective Conscientious Objection, Why Picking Your Battle May Be Good for Everyone. The next finalist is Midshipman Second Class Brendan Troutman for the paper The Implications of Natural Law on the Morality of Targeting Non-Combatants. Midshipman Troutman. The next finalist is Midshipman Second Class Olivia Yeager for the paper Just War Theory in Parallel with Natural Law. Midshipman Yeager. And the actual award winner for the spring semester, Midshipman Second Class Teresa Kennedy, for the paper that was written Whether We Can, spelled K-A-N, or We Can't, K-A-N-T, The Morality of Selective Conscientious Objection. She is actually an exchange student at the Air Force Academy right now. She completed a summer doing the Auschwitz program that's sponsored by the Stockdale Center, where we send a group of midshipmen who study the Holocaust in Poland. She was one of those who did that this summer, but she's actually in Colorado Springs right now. But we are going to mail her check to her because she asked for the check. So those are our finalists and our award winners. Gentlemen, thank you. So I get to have the last word, and that is to send us off with one final thought. And that is, a little bit ago, the Admiral stood in front of the Brigade of Midshipmen, said some great things to set them on a course for their time remaining at the Academy, whether that time was 4 years or 1 year. And two words he left the midshipmen with were the words strength and virtue. And I've thought a lot about those two words recently, and I think about role models. Because if we're going to be people of strength and virtue, we need role models. And one of those role models is Admiral Lawrence. And as I've thought about Admiral Lawrence, there's a quote that Senator John McCain once said about Admiral Lawrence that to me summarizes strength and virtue that was found in that man. And this is what Senator McCain said. "We witnessed 1,000 acts of courage, compassion, and love. And the best of us was Billy Lawrence." He seemed to know that some of us weren't as strong as he was, particularly when times were tough. He inspired us to do things we weren't capable of doing, to go one more round with our captors, and he always led us with love. That is strength and virtue. And on this 13th anniversary of 9/11, I have another role model. Maybe part of that is because I grew up on Long Island, outside of New York City. And I've always known a lot of New York firefighters. But if you think about 9/11, and you think about when those planes hit, there were a certain group of people that went up to save people while people were at the top going down trying to make sure that they were saved themselves. And there's hundreds of stories that came out of that day. One is about a former SEAL who was on the 85th floor. And that SEAL was well trained, but had never been ready to expect what he had to face that day. And in spite of that background, he began to make his way down some of those floors. But at one point, he just got confused, disoriented. He began to lose his breath. He thought it was all over. When out of that darkness, he saw a lantern. And the silhouette of a New York firefighter. And that firefighter came over to this pretty burly, strong man and said, "It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Let me lead you to where you need to go to get down all the way." So he led that young man to this next staircase and began to walk down with him. And then he said, "You okay?" And that individual said, I'm good. And just as he's saying, "I'm good," that firefighter is already on his way back up to where he had just come from. And that individual, that former SEAL, would get to the bottom of the North Tower and would get out into the street. And minutes later, that tower would collapse. And that firefighter would be one of 343 New York firefighters who would lose their lives that day. My daughter was an EMT at Ground Zero, and the experiences she had are unbelievable. But the one thing that she said more than anything else was watching New York firefighters go up the stairs while those who were being saved were coming down. And to me, that's strength and virtue too. So on this 9/11, 13 years later, we have two great role models, Admiral Lawrence and those firefighters. So our obligation to me is to go out and live a life of strength and virtue. and remember what we heard here today, the stories that we heard, the fellowship that we had. But be people of strength and virtue so that we may be the role models to the next group, and that we would always be people that are willing to go up the stairs when others are going down. Good night. Thank you for being with us, and God bless you.